Hey everybody, and welcome back to Sweatpants BI. It's me, Sean, here, and this week on the channel I'm doing another dashboard redemption, where I take an example of a dashboard that I found, usually on LinkedIn, that I think embodies a bunch of very common design and visualization mistakes that newer Power BI developers make all the time. And I'm going to point out what a lot of those poor choices are, what those design mistakes are, and also talk about some ways that you can pretty easily fix them. This week, the dashboard redemption that I'm going to talk about is an example of a dashboard that I found that utilizes the same toy sales data set that I've used and talked about many times on this channel. In fact, several months ago, I used this data set as a full-length tutorial on Sweatpants BI and also for one of my Udemy classes. So this is a data set that I was very familiar with, which is one reason why I picked it for dashboard redemption. It was pretty easy for me to take this data set and recreate a lot of the design choices that the original developer made in order to walk through how I would have done things differently and how I think you could have turned this report into something really special. Now, once again, when I'm doing dashboard redemptions, the point is obviously not to attack another Power BI developer. Everyone's learning, everyone's doing their best. The person who made this, I think, made a lot of mistakes. But if you're someone who has never taken design classes, or if you're someone who has never been coached on data visualization or aesthetics, or even Power BI, if you're just, learning Power BI on your own, then a lot of the mistakes that this person is making are completely understandable. So once again, dashboard redemption, the point is not to attack people. We're just attacking some of the choices that were made in Power BI so that if that person's watching, hopefully they can improve their reports moving forward. And if you're someone that recognizes a lot of the mistakes that I'm going to point out in your own dashboards, then hopefully you will also be able to fix those moving forward. So without further ado, let's jump into this month's dashboard redemption and talk about some ways that we can fix these mistakes. Now, the first thing that you're going to notice in this dashboard redemption is just the sheer amount of color. A lot of Power BI developers, one of the first fundamental mistakes that they make when designing dashboards is that they just go crazy with their color palette. Anything flies. There's not a lot of, very deliberate attention paid to when to use color. So they just slap color on everything. There's color on slicers, which makes me gasp a little bit. There's color in the background, which not necessarily a bad idea, but it does complicate some of your other design choices that you're going to have to make because all of your other colors are going to have to sort of jive or align with whatever color you have slapped in the background. There's color behind the title, and the title of the report is in its own block. That's another thing that kind of makes me cringe. And then there's, all kinds of different colors used across different cards. Different data visuals. There's a really bright, loud green color that is very, very distracting, used behind this line chart, and only this line chart for some reason. It's not, used in the background of any other data visuals. And there's also, three colors used in a single table, which I find very distracting. So right out of the gate, the first thing that anyone is going to notice who's jumping into this report is that this report is just colors gone wild. Because this is colors gone wild, someone who's looking at this for the first time, their eye is going to be pulled in 100 different directions at once. The colors that are really pulling my attention are this sort of neon green in this monthly profit line chart, and the same neon green in this gauge here. And a little bit to the neon green over here because it's laid against a super dark background. So honestly, if you're a newer Power BI developer and you don't feel very confident with your color choices, one thing that I might recommend that you do right here is take a step back, like pause this video, take a step back and really pay attention to where your eyes are drawn in this report. And ask yourself, why are your eyes drawn that way? Like I said, for me, my eyes are drawn right to the middle of the page because of all this very bright green used in this background here. But I'd be curious where your eyes are drawn. Now, okay, there's a whole lot of color happening. That's not the only thing that I want to point out about these colors. The other things that I want to talk about are some of the emotional and cultural significance that we imbue in colors. And now granted, if you're watching this from another country, or if different colors have different meanings in your culture, maybe the things that I'm going to point out won't resonate with you. But I want to point out that especially in sort of the Western business world, the color red is often used to visualize things that are going wrong or going poorly. These are things that need fixing. So, for someone who is jumping into this report and they're immediately looking for the color red, they are immediately associating that there's something bad going on. The color green, by comparison, often means that things are good, and the color yellow means that things, are not necessarily at a bad point yet, but maybe there's something that needs to be monitored. So let's look at all the places where like red and green and yellow is being used here. Okay, so we've got red used in the slicers here. To me, that's just distracting. I would cut that red entirely. The red is not adding anything to these slicers other than, in my opinion, making it a little bit more difficult to see things like the eraser button and to read all here. The red is a complete, waste of color here. Also down here, I'm looking at this table and I see cost in the red, revenue in the red, year-to-date profit in the red. I'm immediately panicking if I'm the owner of this toy company, because I'm seeing so many important things in the red here. Now, it may be the case that only a few of these items should really be in the red. It may be the case that maybe there are a few items where things are going poorly and there are a few items where things are going just fine. But when we're using red for everything, we're not able to, really use color for our benefit and for our audience's benefit to really spotlight areas of concern. Everything's red, so therefore nothing might as well be, because we can't focus on anything. I'll also point out that color should almost never be used in the background of a data visual. This bright green color is contributing nothing to helping me understand this monthly profit. I also want to point out that in two visuals here, the stock on hand by category and monthly revenue per category, you have colors used for the same concept, but they're not consistent. So by that, what I mean is, we have, in this first visual here, assuming that this is the first visual that someone looks at, we have visually encoded this arts and crafts block with this green. And we have visually encoded this toys block with this color blue. So logically, you would expect in this pie chart, and I'm not going to comment in this video on whether or not you should use pie charts or not. I've commented on that enough throughout all of my videos. Short answer is no, but I'm going to even allow the pie chart for now. However, what I would not allow is that suddenly when toys are visualized over here, we're using the arts and crafts green that we used up here. So someone that is just, quickly scanning this is going to immediately see, okay, arts and crafts, big. And if they don't read this, they're going to assume that arts and crafts also makes up the majority of this donut or of this pie chart. Whereas arts and crafts is actually yellow here, and the blue is used for electronics instead of toys. So, one thing that you want to keep in mind with regard to color is if you apply different colors to different categories in one visual, you want to make sure that you're using the same colors and keeping those consistent if you're visualizing the same categories in another visual. Another couple of things that I want to point out that are just, problems with this particular report. I'm also noticing up here, and I would only notice this because I'm very, very familiar with this specific data set, is that, this is a Mexican toy sales data set. And up here we have Durango. Looks like it's somewhere in the United States. We have La Paz here, which of course is in Bolivia, and we have Santiago, which is in Chile. And, one thing that I'm noticing about the data set is that all of the other data points are in Mexico. So, we can just quickly pull up a Google window here, and let's just see if there's also a Durango in Mexico. Okay, there's a Durango in Mexico, but there's also one, if you noticed, in Colorado, which is probably, I would feel very confident saying that that's the Durango that is being visualized. So let's go ahead and look up whether or not there is a La Paz in Mexico. Looks like there is, and Is there also a Santiago in Mexico? Ding, ding, ding. It looks like there is. So, one other thing that unfortunately, in this specific example, the report builder probably just didn't know to do, which is understandable, but I'm going to give you a little trick here is, let's go ahead and get these data points that have been mapped to the wrong country. Let's get those back into Mexico here. So I'm just going to go and add a new column super quickly here. And let's call this, well, just to be consistent, I'll call it store country. And I know that all of these data points are supposed to be in Mexico. So I'm just going to hard code in Mexico. Next, let's go ahead and go up here and let's set our store country field type to country. Let's set our store city field type to city. I'm going to go ahead and open up my visualizations here. Let's go ahead and drop country here. And now let's go ahead and expand all of this down one level in the hierarchy. Boom. Now you can see no Bolivia, no Chile, no Colorado. Now all of my data points are correctly mapped to somewhere in Mexico. I'm not going to hover on all of these dots to find Durango and La Paz. I thought I might get lucky. I'm hovering over a couple, but they're in there. You can see that there are now no other data points outside of Mexico. So that's a quick fix to that specific problem. Now I want to back up and talk about some things that are a little bit more big picture. Everything that I've talked about so far is just design stuff. Too many colors, those are easy to fix. We can cut those colors back. There are too many fonts. We've got Comic Sans happening. We've got possibly like a Times New Roman. And we've got examples of Calibri or Segway. I can't tell them apart. But one of those fonts happening in some of the other visuals, that's just adding additional visual and mental clutter and sort of noise to this report. We've got way too many different fonts happening. I would recommend that if you have 3 or 4 fonts, try to scale that back to 1, maybe 2. I can sometimes, a lot of my reports will use Calibri and DIN. So I'm not going to lecture people on make sure you only use 1 font when I use 2 fonts all the time. But I would highly recommend that you never use serif fonts like Times New Roman. And I would also highly recommend that you never use Comic Sans if you can help it. It's just no, people. Just take my word on that. But the bigger problem that we have here is that there is just no focal point or message to this report. It's not making it obvious what I should care about. And even if you're practicing, even if you're learning Power BI, you need to be putting yourself in the position of someone who owns the company of whatever data set you're working with. Even if there is, even if there's not a clear company, like, way back when I did a big infographic basically visualizing, NASA and Russian Space Agency, space shuttle launches. I think it was for the Maven Analytics Space Challenge. Obviously that report is not for NASA, but try to imagine that you're someone who has a really deep interest in understanding that data, and then figure out what would be important to them and focus on it. So here we have a toy sales analysis report. So what is the headline here? What should I really care about in this report? And for me, stock on hand, there are 2 visuals here. Honestly, I'm having a lot of trouble figuring out why I should care about either of these visuals. Maybe it's very, very important how much stock we have on hand. But the report is not telling me or making me care about that stock information. So I would say I'd probably just get rid of those 2 visuals entirely. For me, what the headline is the fact that revenue year to date is down 20% from the previous year. For me, the headline is total revenue versus target. It looks like our target is, 15.9 million. And we've only made 14.44 million. Now, I will say this gauge is missing a lot of context. Maybe we're at 14.5 million and our target is 16 million. And maybe we're only like halfway through the year. Maybe we're blowing our target out of the water. Or maybe it's like December 29th and we only have like 2 more days to hit that target and it's not looking like we're going to get there. Context is everything when you're just showing a gauge with a number versus, a target. So I will say I'm not in love with the gauge, but I'm going to allow that. I still think that that's probably something that would be more interesting to me if I were a sales leader than just, than just seeing like 14.4 million or seeing the stock on hand, visuals that I decided to get rid of. I also think that there's real opportunity down here with the year-to-date profit. And maybe the year-to-date change in profit for all of these different products. Because if this is a toy sales analysis report and I'm thinking that I really want to understand, where our performance is from a sales perspective, and I want to understand what is driving that sales performance, then I'm going to want to know if any of my products are drastically underperforming compared to last year, or if I have any products that are suddenly selling gangbusters compared to last year. It's also not particularly interesting to me to just see where my stores are located. I want to know which stores are in trouble, which stores are, really selling well, and which stores aren't selling well. So I'm going to, just totally get rid, when I move to the after section, I'm going to completely get rid of anything that's not helping me understand our performance from a sales perspective and what is driving that performance. In other words, where are the trouble areas? I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time working on that. Like, I'm going to do something fairly fast just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to use just a little bit of DAX because DAX is definitely going to help us unpack this year-over-year change more effectively than if I was just dropping visuals and summing sales and summing stock onto the page. In order to really understand that performance and that year-over-year change, there is going to be some DAX involved. I'm not going to actually write the DAX in this video because I've already, used this data set on my channel. If you want to, go back and find the full-length tutorial where I walk through how to build a sales performance dashboard off of this specific sales data set, just go back to some of the old Sweatpants BI videos, and I have a toy sales analysis report of my own that I completely walk through, including all of the DAX. But I've pointed out all of the things that are really wrong with this report. Way too much color, inconsistent use of colors, too many fonts, no focal point. There's nothing, immediately clear that I need to care about if I'm the owner of this toy company. And, there were some cities mispositioned, but I was able to get that stuff fixed. So now let's go ahead and jump to the after version where I have taken most of the stuff that you see on the page and I've just cleaned it up a little bit. And now we have a new toy sales analysis that makes me, care about our performance and understand that revenue and profit is what I need to be concerned about as a sales leader or as the owner of this company. And I've also taken steps to really flag where there are problem areas. And I want to be clear here also that I've basically used a lot of the same visual concepts as the previous version that you saw over here. I've just given them more prominence and made it easier to focus on. And I've also, made some other design choices that have just made it a little bit easier for me to pack more punch in the same amount of space. So like you'll notice, I've got my toy sales analysis title right here in the middle top of the report. And I've got some slicers over here on the left. The first thing that I did is I just pulled my title over here to the left. That freed up a lot more room for slicers. I've actually got 2 additional slicers that aren't even used here. Instead of just using date and product category, I also brought over product name and store name. And the next thing that I focused on was my gauge here, which you can see I'm underperforming relative to my goal. Now, one thing that I will also point out is that visual didn't actually have the goal properly labeled as the target. Technically, if you go over here and click on this visual, there's nothing in the target value. So one thing that I did is I added a target line and I just set an arbitrary end to this gauge of 16.5. So there's my target, and you can see revenue is currently $1.45 million behind our target. I added that as a subtitle just to tell people, hey, we're behind target. You probably care about that. That's why my gauge is filled red to indicate that we're behind the target. There's our green line that would make us green if we were at or beyond it. And I also, I didn't actually do this, but you could create dynamic text that would automatically change, every single day when this report updates to let us know where we are relative to the target. I will confess that for this tutorial, I did just hard code in the 1.45, but a really cool idea is to actually use DAX to make like a string measure that would actually spit in a dynamic, constantly updating, subtitle based on, daily performance or something like that. I also called out that the year-to-date profit change is 17% and called out that profit is also down year-to-date. And beneath that, using the brand new card slicer with reference labels, I spotlighted that year-to-date profit is 1.8 million, and in the same period last year, we had made 2.2 million. Then I'm leading to the next question. Where is year-to-date profit changing? And I'm pointing out that arts and crafts profit has surged year over year, but amounts to a small percent of overall profit, while electronics has fallen 52%. And then you notice that I've got 3 little dots here because I'm picking up this same thought over here. This is a huge driver of declining profit because electronics was our most profitable category last year. And there I'm calling out the fact that our year-to-date profit last year was, our year-to-date profit this year is just $327,000, but last year it was almost a little bit more than twice that. So that's a huge motivator for understanding why profit's down, why revenue's down. Next, I'm taking the concept that was presented here in this table, and I'm just expanding that and making it a little bit easier to care about it. First, I got rid of cost, and I'm just focusing on revenue and profit by the different products. So here I've got my product names, here I've got year-to-date revenue, here I've got year-to-date profit last year and year-to-date profit this year. And then I added a conditional column here that actually shows the year-over-year change. And I was also sure to include bars in this to indicate that, okay, color buds are way down, dart guns are way down, kids makeup kits are way down, looks like barrel of slime for some reason is way up, but I'm at least helping a user unpack a little bit more of what is going on, in this table and which specific products we might need to be concerned about. Over here, I need to go back, of course, and add my store country. There we go. But now, instead of just showing where the stores are located, I can say profits are down year to date everywhere except for Culiacan, where profit is, and again, apologies for my atrocious Spanish pronunciation. I'm giving it my all, folks. But in Culiacan, where profit is unexpectedly up 40%. So instead of just showing where our stores are located, I'm also doing more to spotlight hotspots and areas where things are going well. You can see that it looks like, here in Guadalajara, profit growth is down almost 21%. Looks like over here, in Santiago. So there's the Santiago, Mexico. It's down 20% over here, down almost 30% in Villahermosa, and down almost 30% in Merida. So, now I'm able to at least show, and I want to emphasize again, I didn't spend a whole lot of time even, making this updated version of the dashboard. I just picked one narrative from the original dashboard, and in this case, I thought it was, probably more important to reflect more on why revenue is down and why we're missing our sales target, and create a report where somebody can start to identify, oh, electronics is way down year to date. And maybe we need to investigate why color buds have crashed so much, since whatever they are, they seem to have made up a lot of profit last year. And maybe there are also some stores that we need to investigate. So, you could do 100 to 1,000 different things with this report to tell somebody more about why we're missing our revenue target, why profit's down. These are just the visuals that I chose, and I tried to use the original report developers' ideas to sort of inform the visuals that I made here. But I just want to emphasize, color, I'm only using 2. Red and green. Everything else is gray. That's why I constantly recommend to people, when you're building Power BI reports, start by making all of your visuals grayscale. Just use white, black, gray, colors like that. And then as you figure out which aspects of your data visual are most important, which is usually where the extremes are, like, which products are our top sellers, which products have had the most growth and the least growth, that tends to be where you want to focus your color. Everything that sort of falls into the middle, or, that is, just kind of there, doesn't necessarily need color. One of the hardest things for a lot of new developers to sort of grasp is editing themselves and not feeling that impulse to use color for everything. The more color that you use, the less impact it carries. When you use color sparingly, it makes your users laser focused. Toy sales analysis probably isn't, that may not be the first thing that somebody sees when they look at this version of the fixed report. Chances are their eyes are going straight to this big minus 17% and this big gauge here that's red and says our revenue is currently, over about $1.5 million behind our target. That's where the headline is. And if your reports don't have a headline, then chances are that report doesn't even need to exist. At the end of the day, when we're building Power BI reports, it's because someone in our company needs to know something and understand it. And if you're using this A word in your title, analysis, and all you're doing is showing very descriptive or uninteresting bar charts and stuff, then your report doesn't really have analysis. It just kind of describes or shows things that are happening. That makes it just more of a toy sales dashboard. A toy sales analysis helps somebody really explain what is happening behind the numbers and that you're showing, and then you're using things like bar charts and tables and maps to help them unpack why that specific thing is happening the way that it is. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that dashboard redemption. Once again, the focus here is not to attack any individual's report. I could care less who made it. I just love the specific design choices that they made as, somebody who's probably newer to Power BI or who hasn't had a lot of coaching on the aesthetics and data storytelling, so that I can use those and talk about them on the channel. I used to try to create my own examples of poor Power BI reports, and it was insanely difficult. People that are genuinely learning or doing this stuff for the first time make way smarter bad design decisions than I possibly could, and way more interesting to talk about. So that's why when I'm on LinkedIn and I see somebody post something and I'm just like, ooh, that's got a lot of, really juicy mistakes. I love taking those and deconstructing what the problems really are with those design choices, while also showing you how to fix them. Because if I'm just talking about, what's wrong with the report, that's not benefiting you at all. What's really important is to talk about what's wrong and hopefully get you seeing those mistakes, and then jump over to a version of the same report that's been fixed so we can talk about why this works and why this doesn't. If there were things that you saw in the original report that you also thought were problematic that I didn't talk about, I'd love to know what those are in the comments. If there were things that I didn't do that you thought maybe I should have in the fixed version, by all means, let's talk about that too. At the end of the day, that's what the comment sections on YouTube are for. Let's keep it respectful. Once again, we're not trying to attack people who are learning a new skill. We're trying to talk about the very common mistakes that a lot of new Power BI developers make, so that everybody who watches these videos can hopefully gain something and fix those issues moving forward. So that's all we've got for our dashboard redemption this month on Sweatpants BI. I am already working on next month's dashboard redemption, and if you have any dashboards that you've built that you're open to me redeeming, by all means, reach out to me on YouTube, send me that PBIX file. I would love to look at it. If if you're somebody who is open to having that kind of critique, I'm not going to use anybody's real names, whether you want me to or not. I don't want to focus on the individual. So just know that if you do have a report that you would like to submit for a dashboard redemption, I'm happy to use it on the channel, but I'm not going to name anyone's name. That's not what this is about. But anyway, hope you enjoyed that dashboard redemption. I will see you next time on Sweatpants BI. Hope everybody has a great week.